At CDW, we get speed as the new currency of success.
Our team spends way too much time tending to outdated applications and software when they should be focused on driving application agility and innovation.
CDW Amplify Development Services modernizes software and application development to help accelerate innovation and digital transformation.
So you mean building new applications, UI, and mobile interfaces?
Well, you said you needed to innovate more quickly.
Oh, so he's a listener.
To do more at scale, trust CDW Amplify Development Services.
The new GMC Sierra with hands-free driving offers the most advanced and luxurious pickup in its class. Yeah, it rocks.
I'm returning to Clinton, Paris, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton, Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember. They can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go, why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Right, I don't see it in here. What's up, fam? Today is the 10th of August, 2022. Y'all know who it is. I'm DVP, I'm the host. I have a special guest as we're gonna talk about some things because I've been approached with a lot of things going on that I've been avoiding because y'all know I don't like to talk about law and order without all the facts. If I'm gonna give you an opinion that I want you to value. I have a feeling about a lot of things, but if I'm gonna have an intelligent conversation with y'all with my expertise, then you want more than me giving you an opinion and then having to come back and say, oops, I got it wrong. I hate to say this word, but I guess my professional arrogance does not allow for me to keep saying I'm sorry. I just think that's a crappy thing to do. So with me today, I got a friend. I'm gonna call him that. I got a friend, Joseph Mosley, and he will tell you a little bit about himself when we get started. But he is also a professional, did a little bit longer than me. As a matter of fact, probably a whole lot longer than me. But just to give you guys a different perspective, we're gonna talk about a few things. And what I want to do is increase some of your knowledge of why certain things are or not, whether we like them or not. So that's what's gonna happen. But my monologue, so we can get straight to the show, is I am cool with debating with anybody about anything, even your personal opinions, as long as that's what you know it is. I am becoming more politically astute. As far as politics go, I will have a conversation with anybody. I will have a civil conversation with anybody. What I will not do, I will not remain professional. I will not remain humane or even respectful if you are a Retrumplicant and you refuse to acknowledge certain facts. For those of you that follow my page, I make no bones about the fact that I didn't vote for 45, and I never will, and I never would. But I've also made the point that I am, like most of the country, unhappy with Biden. The difference between people who want to have a political discussion is you can be unhappy with somebody. Retrumplicans will never tell you anything bad about 45. So there's nothing to be said. When we're having a conversation, if we can't acknowledge our own wrongdoing to make the problem better, then you're really not having a conversation. You're having a blame session, and that's just not where I'm going with this. So that's not where I'm gonna go with this. So like I say, I got my new friend. His name is Joseph Mosley. He'll be joining us. He'll give his commentary. And again, I will tell you people, I met Mr. Mosley after we got into a debate on another show. We had different opinions. One of the things that I enjoy more than anything else, and this is as racist as I'm gonna get, is I enjoy having intelligent debates with Black men who don't resort to name calling. They give you information, like it or not. They give you information. Then you can sit back and go back and debate facts. And sometimes they tell you things you didn't know, you accept those. Sometimes you tell them things they didn't know, they accept those. They don't have to change their way of thinking. They just open their minds to different possibilities, or the fact that two people can be looking at the exact same thing and still come up with a different conclusion. But that does not change facts. It does not change facts ever. And I like talking to men, especially brothers, who you can do this with. And they increase your knowledge base. So as opposed to saying you're this, you're that, if they tell you something is true, guess what? Add it to your intellectual tool belt, and life will be great. All right. So without further ado, let me welcome Mr. Mosley to the show. We got a couple of topics. I'm assuming that Mo is gonna show up sometime. He's supposed to be our neutral moderator, since he's a free world person. He can keep me and Mr. Mosley on track, because before Mr. Mosley introduces himself, and I'm gonna say this and he can correct me, sometimes because we've been in this field, sometimes we don't always think as civilians when we're trying to explain things, and sometimes we speak too intelligently unintentionally because we're sticking to legal terms when we should be speaking more so that civilians can understand us. And that's something I've had to learn to do when I have these law and order conversations, to try to have somebody else around who can say when we're talking too technical. So without further ado, Mr. Moses, tell us who you are and introduce yourself, sir.
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. Who am I? I'm a veteran of the Chicago Police Department. I'm a adjunct professor, criminal justice, and there's a whole lot more. I've done a few, written a few grants, co-authored a couple of working manuals. I've done work on general orders, special orders. I've taught everybody from civilians to outside agencies, including federal agencies. I've done a little bit of it, and ready to go.
So the Cliff Note version of what he said was, he the man. That's what he said. I'm just breaking it down for y'all. You know, he's a little modest right now, but we're gonna get past all that. I see Mo is coming in. So Mo is gonna help what's up, Scott? How you doing? So one of the first things I actually do want to talk about is yesterday. Mo, did you watch Travis's show yesterday?
No, I missed it.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Joe. I keep forgetting I got two Mo's. So, Joe, can I call you Joe during the show, sir?
Please.
All right. Did you watch Travis's show yesterday?
Some of it, yes.
All right. And one of the things that people love to talk about, and I want to say it's ignorantly, and remember now, ignorance just means you don't have the knowledge. It ain't a bad thing, except what it is. When people call you ignorant, don't take offense to it if they mean it in the simplest form. And people love to talk about defunding the police. So I did a little research and I did a little comparison. And this is where I truly wanted Joe to be here, and even more so. When people talk about defunding the police, and I understand the truest nature of it, because I think some of the assets or the finances could be better redirected. But there was a guy who was talking about reducing police salary or doing this or doing that. And he made a statement, something to the effect that crime is increasing, so why do we need so many cops? And I took great offense to that. People still dying, but we don't ask doctors to take pay cuts, or we don't tell people we don't need as many doctors. And if you don't understand the system, and this is what I learned from law enforcement, you can have an agency who will say, we're going to increase the drone wars. We're going to start a street suppression unit. And it sounds good. We're going to put $1 million into this. It sounds good to you as a layperson. But what they don't tell you is what that $1 million is. They're going to get a major or probably a chief who's going to be 6 figures. And you don't understand where some of the money goes. You think all the money is going toward this unit. The money is going toward supplying this unit. And every time a new unit comes, there's usually another high-priced person or two. The training ain't the same. When you want to defund the police and they getting all this money for this, most agencies are understaffed, which means all the officers can't get trained. So there is a training issue, but they won't tell you that they don't have enough people. They'll just tell you, oh, we got this much more for the budget. But a lot of that goes to each and every time a regime changes, they bring in some of their friends who make a lot of money. And that eats into that money that you think was going to the lowest man on the totem pole, and it doesn't. But why don't y'all ask for congressmen to stop getting raises? Why don't y'all ask them to the best of my knowledge, all congressmen are millionaires. So why do they need raises? They are already millionaires. You don't ask for them to give up nothing. Again, you don't ask for doctors to take pay cuts. So if you're going to have the conversation about defunding the police, bring it from a legitimate place of knowledge. Don't say police always get raises, police make this much. Most cops are working 2-3 extra jobs to try to make ends meet, which is going to lead me to our second subject. We don't go overseas to work because we're not making enough, even though we make $200K in 6 months, which we don't. But so, Joe, what's your thoughts on defunding the police?
Well, first of all, I saw that comment, and I take great umbrage because the person that made that statement had no basis in reality. His argument was fluff, but I will say this to you. Defunding the police is a distraction. And I have a lot of reasons why, but the first one I will tell you is, particularly in our community, we need more police, but we need them better trained. Now, there's a caveat there. We also need more of them to look like the communities that they're policing. I will say this, and I'm sure you've seen it the same. How certain people police in certain neighborhoods is not universal. So how some people police on the north side of Chicago is not the same way they police in the Black communities. Now, when we talk about defunding the police, I will tell you that I have done budgets, and I suggest to anyone in any city, go get your budget, go look at your budget, and I will guarantee you there's one spot that's universal, and that is the narcotics line. Look on the asset forfeitures. and you will see something that's probably going to blow your mind. A lot of these issues, when we talk about budget and all that, again, we can go in, this could be a whole show, but the fact remains that some of these departments are actually self-funded. And when we look at this from again, from the conspiratorial side, where's this revenue? From the tickets, from the arrests? Because believe it or not, there's a price tag for crime, whether it be parking tickets, whether it be bonding issues, all those. Where's that money going? Now, I would suggest because now we're going to start fading into other areas of criminal malfeasance on the police department. Where do we go from there? But in the first instance of defunding the police, if we look across the nation right now, as we speak in 2022, the majority of the departments are being hit because they're understaffed and people are quitting the profession. I mean, you look at New York, Chicago, LA, Texas, even Atlanta.
Especially Atlanta.
Well, believe it or not, the Atlanta problem is the same, almost mirror Chicago.
Right.
Almost exactly. And for the same reasons. Now, defunding the police is a great show tune, and that's all it is. Tell me what we could do better, and I will show you where that money should be pulled from. Now, let me digress just for a minute, just so I can give this to you. We had a mayor here in Chicago who closed over 50 schools. It actually turned out to be 100. He closed all the mental health facilities, but there was no cry from the public for him, for his head. Now, even if we were to defund the police, what about these services that this guy just cut? Now, let me mention this. The 50 schools also happen to be in one particular area, and I'll give you one guess where that is.
I know it was in the upper rich side because they don't need as many schools. I know that's where it was. You're gonna try to fool me, but I know that's where it was.
Yeah, I fooled you on that one because it was in the Black community.
Stop.
So now, and I will share this with you. And here's some people have not really looked at. Since 2017, the number of our kids that have been afflicted with a mental disorder, not mental disorder, that's not the correct term, but a psychological disorder has shot up 74%. 74% since 2017. The number of suicides has doubled. And yet we're less than 15% of the school system. I mean, so let's not get this whole thing twisted by trying to point a finger at one issue. It's like putting your finger in the dike and say, oh, look at these other holes. I'll just plug this one.
Right.
If you do this, it's going to be a holistic approach, or it should be.
And like I said, that ain't one I want to, because that is a whole show into itself. I see my man Mo is here, so I'm gonna bring up some subjects. I'm gonna let Mo keep us on the straight and narrow so we don't lose people. But that whole defund police, because I'm seeing it way too much now, and people don't understand what it means. And all I'm saying, in short, is hold your elected officials more accountable. One of the things I told you guys about before is when you're looking at all these budgets and yada this and yada that, ask them how much are they paying out for false imprisonments, how much are they paying out in use of force, how all these things come from somewhere. And a lot of narcotics agencies are not as good as you would think that they are. But you need to learn how to read, because remember, I told you this, numbers will lie if you don't know what you're reading. I can give you a bunch of numbers and tell you something, and you're gonna say, ooh, that's insane. But if you don't know what you're reading, I could just be giving you fluff to overfool something. Like as Joe just said, you know, I can tell you as a politician, I only cut 10% of the schools. And if there are 500 schools and I only cut 50, it sounds good. But if all 50 were in a particular neighborhood, which I ain't gonna mention, it's not good. But you see other places closing 12 to 15%, but it's region-wide, not section-wide. But like I said, that's just something that I don't mind you challenging I don't mind you challenging us, but come with factual information so that we can help you understand. It is about us getting more money so that we don't quit in droves. It is about, Joe can say what he want to say. I can speak for Joe on this one. I really have never met the man. We do this out of passion. We don't do this for the money. Oh, y'all make a lot of money. And I told somebody, for a base salary of, and I'm being super generous, for a base salary of $60,000 a year, we volunteer to get shot at and help total strangers with no thanks, get spit on, and all these other things. I ain't gonna ever say there ain't bad cops. They're bad people. You can't eliminate them from the system. But quit thinking that we're overpaid based on this. If you don't think that your local politician who only works 8 months out of the year, don't get shot at, is already a millionaire, is overpaid. So I just want you to learn the narrative before you start addressing the narrative. Sorry for that. Mo, come on in and introduce yourself. Mo meet Mo. Joe Mo and Mo Mo.
That's a lot of Mo.
Good Mo's. Can you hear me, DVP?
I got you, sir.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm here. This is a interesting show for me because about 4 years ago, I wrote a book on policing in America. And, you know, I don't think I have all the information, but the cross section of information that I was able to acquire left me with more answers than more questions than answers. All I'm gonna say right now, just so we can keep the show rolling, is that the policing infrastructure is very complex. There's a lot of sides to it, and you know, some of them are intentional and on purpose, and they have a reason for things being the way they are. I'll leave it like that for now until we get into something more deeper.
Let me jump in. Oh, the Mo's at it again.
Yeah, there you go.
Let me just piggyback on that. The system is working the way it was designed. Hear me very closely.
Absolutely.
If we understand that policing in these United States has a basis in slave hunting, then we understand what this thing is really about, or how it was designed and how it was framed. Now, I've had this argument with a few other people, and I want everyone to understand this. When the Constitution was written, when Madison wrote the 12 Amendments, I believe it was in 1891, he did not intend for it to protect Black folks. It was intended to protect the rich, male, white slave owners. Hear me very well. So when I hear Black folks talk about my God-given Second Amendment rights, boy, you better go read some stuff. When he wrote the Second Amendment, it was in response to an uprising in South Carolina. He was trying to put guns in the hands of the slave owner so they could put down the revolt.
See, and that's why we bring you this. And you know, it's so funny. We're gonna change subject. I saw a post yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever, and it said, Black people, be very wary. GOP, Congress, whoever it is you blaming, just gave more rights to a fetus than they did the average Black person.
I gotta put this out there.
Do you think?
I got to say this, people that on both sides of the aisle on this abortion thing, I just want you to think about this. Look at it not from the spiritual side, but look at it from a property rights owner's position.
There you go. So one of the first things I want to talk about is because I'm confused, and Joe said something earlier, that policing in and of itself was not meant for us as a race. Hashtag know better, do better. Don't put yourself in a position where you are where you can have that system used against you. If you know that they're looking for you, don't do anything out of the ordinary to get you put in that position. AKA Brittany Griner. And I want you to understand this. I don't know if either of my moles have been in the military, but when you're traveling abroad, most people know to read the things, because a common thread is one, Americans are arrogant. Americans think everybody owes them something. You read the laws before you go there. I spent some time in Saudi Arabia. They gave us a 38-page manual of what we could not take, what we could not say, what we should not do. The first page and the last page, this is when I was in the United States Air Force, said, if you violate anything between these pages, there is nothing that we can do for you. Do not do them. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. This is when I learned terminology. Do not is not a suggestion. It is a definite order. It don't say you may do these. May means take your chances. Do not means don't do them. And guess what? You didn't do them. You didn't do them. When you do something, and I've heard the term pawn used, and as we talk about, we're gonna get into some of the things where Black people truly may be pawns. I listened to the Brittany Griner case. I'm not sure how much my two moles have listened, but as I told you when it first came out, when everybody was like, oh, she a political prisoner. I said, I'm waiting for something before I pass judgment. I need to hear her say she didn't do it. See, when you don't do something and then you're a pawn, AKA a child in a custody battle between parents, because the child didn't do nothing but get born. The child ain't committed no crime, but the child is being used by both parents for leverage. Brittany Griner committed a crime. She admitted that she committed a crime. Therefore, she cannot be a pawn. So I want us to stop saying that. And I tell you before, that's why we lose so much power as a people, because we pick the wrong fights. We pick the dumb fights that are losers. She admitted to taking stuff over there. And I listened for the second part when they said they tested her. Now, Joe been a cop for a minute. He know a little bit about marijuana. Marijuana stays in your system for for a minimum of 30 days. Cocaine leaves your system in a matter of hours. This I know because I did narcotics. When she was tested, her test came back negative, which means she ain't been taking these drugs given her by her doctor. So if you got chronic knee pain and you took these drugs over there, which is stupid, and you took them while you're over there, why aren't they in your system? This was a question I had. Because if you taking them for pain, Joe, shouldn't it be in your system when they test you for these drugs?
Normally.
So if they're not in your system, this is just me thinking now, what did you do with them? In certain countries, there's a high Black market for marijuana because other than America, most countries don't care for marijuana. Remember, we had this discussion at the Olympics when y'all kept talking about the little racer chick in marijuana, why they should let her run. Most of the free world does not accept marijuana as a recreational drug.
Correct.
But Americans in their arrogance think everybody should because we should. And like it or not, marijuana is a performance enhancing drug. And the reason I can tell you that it is, because I studied this, is because if you're doing something like racing and marijuana takes away the jitters, it makes you that much more fluid. See, I don't think about that. But you know it relaxes you. If you take away that jump, it'll make you run a little bit smoother. It is. It don't make you run faster. It don't make you jump higher. It just makes you smoother.
Well,
Ain't that? Go ahead, sir.
The Europeans call us ugly Americans. And the reason they do is because, as you said, we keep referring to everything in our terminology. For instance, people think you have the right to free speech. No, you don't.
Only in America.
Right. You try that stuff in China or some other communist country, see what happened to you. When we talk about the narcotics issue, you know, you get caught. What was a kid about 10 years ago? An American got caught. He spit gum on the Taiwanese street. And they said, hey, we're going to cane this guy. Well, the president got involved and the State Department got involved. And they said, well, we want this kid back. And people said, no problem. They caned him.
and you ain't heard from him since.
You ain't. I guarantee he ain't spitting no more gum nowhere.
And this is one of the things I will say, having been overseas. When you go overseas, and I suggest every American do it, go overseas. They don't have a such thing as a repeat offender.
No,
they don't. Their incarceration system is such that don't nobody ever want to do it. Take your time. Watch Locked Up Abroad. Spend a whole week just binging Locked Up Abroad, and watch what they get sentenced for. Things that over here we take for granted. And And this is one of those things where we get so comfortable with what's over here, we think everybody should acquiesce to us. And that's simply not the case. And a lot of those countries are much safer to live in because everybody's scared to do something.
Well,
they're scared.
But see, again, because we're the ugly Americans, we think everybody has the same judicial system. We think you have the right to an attorney. You have the right to know your rights. That's unheard of. I mean, so even though England has Magna Carta, these other countries don't have any of these so-called rights because whether they're based on religious rights or whatever else, they don't exist. Not in the forms that we assume. And notice I use the word assume. And what does assume do? That we assume that we are naturally ingrained to have. Now, all my family went in the military. I've traveled abroad. I've been in Africa, and I can tell you, when you get to these places, you know, we think of buses, we think of cabs. It's a whole different world. I was in Nigeria and I looked around, they looked like me, but the system was totally different. You know, we look at cabs, jitneys, whatever else. That doesn't exist in most other places. When we talk about weapons, that's another issue. You know, the Second Amendment, that's almost non-existent in these other countries.
Almost.
You get caught with a gun in Jamaica. In fact, I can tell you because I know it happened to somebody. Get caught with a bullet in Jamaica, see what happened to you.
A bullet, he said, not a gun, a bullet.
A bullet.
And y'all don't understand that in England, where cops came from, cops was on patrol, they have whistles. They have whistles. Look up some of the mass shootings in other countries. Hell, look up any shooting in most other countries. They don't generally have them. But they look at crime differently and they do things a little bit different. And these are things that we take for granted in our system of jurisprudence because we think we got so many rights for this and for that and for this and for that. And we take them for granted. Like I say, you can't go other places. You can't go to England talking about the Queen, whether they like her or not. Speak ill of the Queen and see what happened.
Correct.
Speak ill of the Queen. And it's crazy because one of our heroes is Mandela. What was Mandela? What got Mandela in so much trouble? Speaking against the government. In other places, you can't. If you do it, you better do it in a dark room with concrete and metal around everything so can't nobody hear you. And you best do it by yourself. Because if somebody go tell, it's a whole different world. But here, soldiers, like them or not, they fight for your right to be able to say what you want to say for the most part and have no harm. They fight so that you can be disrespectful to the national anthem or the pledge and then pull a Brittany Griner and want them to come get you out. When you said you don't want to cooperate with nothing over here because of systemic racism and the way our police force act. But then you went to a place to work a second job where it's worse. Notice the hypocrisy, which is why I want to say I hate it for her, but she picked her poison. You can't tell me you don't like our police, our pledge, none of that, but then you go to Russia and just for S&G, shits and giggles, everybody was given a note to leave Russia because something was about to happen. She pulled the OJ and she thought she was better than the system and she chose to stay. See, in Georgia, we got a flood zone at Nancy Creek. Whenever it rains too hard, they tell everybody at Nancy Creek to move out because you're gonna get washed away. This happens every 4 or 5 years. People who stay in Nancy Creek get no sympathy from me. Why stay in a flood zone? It's a known flood zone. Your house ain't gonna be there in 5 years. Don't build $1 million mansions in Nancy Creek.
But let me say this, brother, and particularly for Brittany, at this point, she is a pawn. And let me say why. The guy they're trying to trade for her, I would never do it.
Whew, yeah, that's too high a cost. She got to ride them 9 years out.
Look, man. In case nobody has done the research, please go look this guy up. This guy is so dangerous, they make movies about him. He's so dangerous, there's a couple other countries that want him. And I guarantee you, and he's, I guess the favorite term now is oligarch. So he's a billionaire. His his money is just hiding until he gets out. Now, I would suggest everybody listen to this. The book that just came out is called Putin's People, and it shows how Putin came into power using former KGB, SFB people. Every one of those oligarchs are former FSB. That's the equivalent to our CIA.
And this guy
can scare people.
This guy that they want to get, I'm telling y'all, he is, I want to say he's the worst of the worst, but he ain't. He is the leader of the worst. He is the leader of the worst. This is a guy you don't want. You don't want him out there. Anyway. I want to talk about intent, because we always talk about it. And I tell you guys a lot of times that the hardest reason it is to convict police officers of murder is because most states that I've ever had to look at require, they all have an intent clause where you have to prove that the cop did it intentionally, not recklessly, not negligent, but with intent, which is why murder in most cases is always the wrong charge for a cop. Now, and I'm telling you this because I sent the guys a clip about Lisa Fulmer. If you don't know who Lisa Fulmer is the worst of the worst. Lisa Fulmer went to a McDonald's, ordered some fries. Her fries were cold. She asked the employees for another fry. According to Lisa Fulmer, they laughed at her. She called her son, who was already out of jail for a murder charge. She called her son and FaceTimed them to say, look, they clowning your mama about some fries, yada, 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 yada. Her son gets up, gets dressed, he comes to this McDonald's to fight these people. He calls one of the McDonald's cooks out. They enter into a fight. The McDonald's employee was wrong for leaving his place of employment and went outside. But Lisa's son pushed him, went and pulled out a gun and shot him. He died over some fries. And when we talk about intent, and this is these are two subjects. So Joe and Mo, ask any questions when you don't understand, because I'm gonna give my interpretation. Lisa caused this whole thing to happen. Had she not called her son, who was already out on murder, he couldn't have murdered a second person over fries. Yeah, he shot him in the parking lot of the McDonald's. And from my understanding of the legal system,
the article, John, the article I read, she didn't call him and he came up there. He was already in the parking lot in the car.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Okay. But when you call somebody who you know has a violent temper, what's the difference between you pulling the trigger? Because go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. I know where you're going, but she's going to be charged under the felony murder rule. Okay. Felony murder rule says that if you are a part of or cause, now there's a difference. If you cause, now the decision for intent, the way it was explained, well, I was a homicide detective for most of my career, so I can tell you how we did it. And most of the time when we got charges approved for murder, again, like you said, intent. And how do we show intent? Intent, according to the court, says you've got to have a couple of issues. You got to have a cooling off period and a time distance issue. So it means that if you went from point A to point B, and in between that time, you had 5 seconds, and that's actually a decision that was made some time ago. If you had any amount of time to think about your actions, it's deemed intent. So it doesn't mean that you just woke up and said, I'm going to go shoot this guy. It says that you went from point A to point B with a cool off period. Now, in addition to that, this guy came from a car, according to what Roy just said. You got out of your car, you went to address another issue, and you fired a shot that took the life of. So she'll get charged under the felony murder rule, but she will get charged because her action caused her son to commit the act, and he's going to be, she'll get in charge under that.
Right, and that's kind of where I was going, because she can't be charged with the murder. She didn't do it. But in Georgia, we got the felony murder, where if I do something and it caused another crime, I'm responsible for everything that happens with that. And, you know, we use the case of a guy robs a bank and the bank teller has a heart attack. Well, he didn't commit murder, but he committed felon murder because the felon that he committed caused the murder. And she's going to be party to this assault thing and all this. But again, these are things that we're setting ourselves up for. Why would you even tell your son, who you know is already out for murder, about somebody harassing you over some French fries? What's the whole point? And people will say, well, why is she getting locked up? Well, why shouldn't she get locked up? Right. She didn't tell him to do it. You married, Joe?
Yes, sir. 30
and
years.
I know, Mo, you married. How many times in our married life has our spouse told us something when she got home and we wish she would have told us earlier so we could have done something about it foolishly? And we realize that they know us better than we know us. They wait until there's nothing we can do about it to tell us about an incident that we would have corrected had we known about it real time.
Right.
So what I'll say is this, when I get told about those situations, immediately, I get upset, mad, angry. But then the fact that I'm not in that situation at the moment and I have time to think and get some clarity, I appreciate my wife for not telling me, because I know I would have just flipped off the dome and did something stupid. So
that cooling off period.
It was exactly needed, exactly what I needed to get my senses right. And inside I'm thanking her. Inside I'm thanking.
Right. Go ahead, Joe.
I completely agree. Again, these concepts are actually written into law. Cool off period, go from point A to point B. But I would suggest something that's going to probably, again, people not going to hear it, but we're still facing traumas that were inflicted on us from slavery. Now, hear me out. That doesn't mean that it gives us a right. I mean, just because, and again, people are not going to like what I got to say, just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. Sorry.
Say it again.
Just because you're poor don't mean you got to be an asshole. Sorry. That's just me. Now, do circumstances lead to certain things? And I will tell you, in my career, have I bought food for people? Yes. I can understand the person that steals food to feed. I can't support the guy that sticks up somebody for crack. Now, that's just, maybe that sounds crude, but that's a reality. My family comes from the South, dirt poor for all intents and purposes. My great-grandfather bought us out of slavery. To this day, we don't know how he did it. But he didn't allow nobody in his family to be a thief. Now, you can go out there and grow some stuff, or you can go out and work for some stuff. And again, I don't want anybody to confuse that with the BS about pull yourself up by the bootstraps when you ain't got no boots. But there is a difference between self-preservation and wanting something. There's a difference between rights and privileges. See, healthcare is a right. A phone is a privilege.
And listen to what he's saying. I told you guys a story earlier. I don't want to dispel any myths about there being any good cops. So don't believe Joe when he tell you that he bought a homeless people food, because remember, all cops are bad. We're all bad. But in a moment of I guess I'm gonna say I was drunk or something, because you can't have good cops. But I worked at a grocery store. I had a guy in there stealing food. Normally I would lock him up, but he stole some Lux beans, some bread, and some bologna. He just sitting in there eating. When I got to him, I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'm hungry." He said, "Everybody say if you ask me, they'll do something, but they won't. I just want to eat."
Yeah.
Now, if you know what Lux beans is, them the cheapest beans you can get. They're in a little silver can. But it's just sitting there. He ain't got Oscar Mayer bologna. He got the little red stripe. He's hungry. He got $5.50 worth of food. I paid for his food. I made him sweep the store and take out boxes. Because as Joe said, now when you're stealing crab legs, see, there's nothing for us to negotiate on. Because if you're stealing crab legs or pork chop something, that means you have heat where you at. Buddy just wanted to eat. He got bread. He got bread and beans and some lunch meat. It's a difference. And there are some good cops. Even Mo in his book will tell you about some good cops. there are some bad cops. We're not sitting around denying that, but you can't sit back, as Joe said, and realize the system works against you most of the time. You don't have to help that system. Just because you don't have a father, you grew up without a father, does not mean you have the right to be a killer or violent, or it's a built-in excuse for any dumb shit that you want to do. Oh, you know, I came from a single parent home, so I never had a dad to tell me that stealing was wrong. You sound stupid. And guess what? You should go to jail for that stupidity. Did you have your hand up, Joe?
I just, there's so many things I'd like to share with you. I mean, because I can tell you that, quick story. I was on patrol and I get a call to respond to a burglary / robbery. It actually was a theft. So unfortunately, I don't know about Atlanta, but in Chicago, a lot of our neighborhood stores are owned by other people than us. And I think you know where I'm going with that.
I do.
So I get there and this ladies, these idiots have cuffed her. Now, they own the store, but they don't have a right to cuff you. So that's problem number one for me, because I didn't like the way what they said. Anyway, so I'm talking to her, I'm like, what are you doing? She said, I got kids at home and it was snowing. Now, if you know about Chicago, you know how our winters are. She's got snot running down her nose. My kids are at home. I had to get some food. There's no heat, blah, blah, blah. So I called for another car. I said, hold on just for a second. I go back to her house and I'll be dang if they were not, remember latchkey kids? I've seen those. The kids are in the house. So now I have to make a decision. Do I lock her up for theft and potentially have those kids taken from them and put into a system to ruin them for life? Or do I do what I do? And I did. I went back, I talked to, I won't call him his name, but I went back and had a conversation with him. He said, well, she had 2 bags of groceries. I said, okay, how much was it? And it was some ridiculous price. That's the other thing. I gave him the money. I put that lady in my car, in my squad car, which I shouldn't have done by order.
A lawbreaker.
I am. I took her back to her house, put her out the car, gave her groceries. But I kept those kids out of the system, at least for then.
Right.
Because I did not see the point of locking someone up for being hungry. We're one of the wealthiest natures in the country, and we got homeless vets, we got homeless people. Neither of these things should occur in these, in my mind.
And one of the things that he won't say, and I say this, and I'm gonna let Mo do his interrogation of us, is that there. And I told a guy yesterday, you know, he wanted to point out all the bad cop stories. I ain't finna knock them, but I guarantee you, for every bad cop story you see on TV or read about, I can find you 10 great stories where cops did what Joe did. And if you talk to the community, see, Joe can't say this while he working because Joe violated policy. Joe broke the law. Same as DVP did. Whenever we intervene because Lady Justice ain't tilting right, because we see totality of circumstances said that the crime and the charging of it don't match what we seeing. Like I said, when somebody's still in state, that means you got power. That means you're not starving. You're hungry. You're not starving. When they still in peanut butter and bread, they're hungry.
Yes.
So different. So we gonna make on call scene, same crime. And this is where we have to use our skills, our worldly skills, but more importantly, we listen to how you talk to us. See, as a cop, and I tell you, I was a cop for 22 years. I think Joe said he'd been doing it 30 plus years.
Yeah.
But guess what? Joe been black all his life. DVP been black all his life. So when you start off using racial slurs at me and telling me, nigga, what I ain't gotta do and I should have did this, guess what? Any empathy I may have had for you is going down. It ain't my fault you ain't learn how to talk to people. And I'm sure Joe would tell you this. There's some times that we've taken harsh talk and we knew it was emotional and we let it go over. We let them get away with it because of the situation. Because yeah, when it comes time to arrest you, I know why you calling me a bitch. I get it. I ain't mad about you saying that. But be careful now. especially if you want me to try to empathize with you or help you. Because right now I do have the power. And you taking all that power, you are personally taking that power from me by trying to make me your enemy, as opposed to giving me your story and letting me decide what I want to do. And this is one of those things that's hard to do a lot of times, because people want to tell us what we did for somebody else without knowing the whole story. I'm sure that most of us good to great cops have broken laws, broken rules more than 5 times, more than we care to admit. But sometimes we have to, sometimes we feel a personal responsibility to right wrongs. And it's at our discretion, and we prepared to take it. Joe just told, he put them people in his patrol car. He know he was dead wrong.
Yep.
He probably didn't handcuff them. And damn near every policy I see that say, when you put somebody in your patrol car, if they're not an employee, they're supposed to be handcuffed, good, bad, or indifferent. He didn't do it.
And you're supposed to notify dispatch.
And you're supposed to tell dispatch what you're doing. We don't do that. You just make a couple of extra turns. You end up somewhere off, and that's it. It's okay. It's what we do. And nobody wants to give credit for that. One, because we can't share these stories with you real time. We can't. It's detrimental to our job.
Man, let me say this, brother.
Do you think, Joe, you don't need my permission?
To Brother Mo, let me just say this. I'm going to pick your book up, number one. But I will tell you this. The battle of the Black policeman is unfettered and has never been told. You hear about it here. You hear about me and Stan talk about Behind the Blue Curtain, maybe a few other places, even with Travis. But you don't hear about us because the narrative is not designed for us to be the good guys. Tell me if I'm wrong, Mo.
No, you listen, 100% right. I did 3 years research. I'm not a police officer, but I respect what, especially you Black policemen, what you guys go through, because I did 3 years research on policing in America, and I know that there's a complexity built in to being not only a police officer, but a Black police officer. The complexity is incrementally more difficult. So I can't speak on exactly what happens. That's why you guys are here to speak on that. But I can tell you what my research, what I gathered during my research, and what I'll say is it's very complex. There's no simple solution to it, because it's built within a system that's already in place and has its own, definition and details. So, all I can say is hats off and respect, especially if you're able to navigate on the straight and narrow within that domain. That's I mean, I understand. I just put it like that.
Well, let me add this to a couple of, people talking about again, I start off by saying that the system is functioning as it was designed. And Lady Justice, if you look at that, the figure is very apropos. Number one, she is blind. She's blind to the truth. And the scales are very uneven. But we did that to ourselves, and we continue to do it. There's another book that's out, it's called Pleading Out, in which Dan Cannon makes the argument that if more people challenge the court system, there'll be less people in jail. And after I read it, I did some statistics. He's right on the money. Because the way that the police system was built, it turns out it was actually designed and helped by Ben Franklin, because they wanted to keep a working class. And isn't that what we're doing now? If, in case people don't know it, a lot of these prisons are doing work for corporations.
And that's the way it's going to be. And one of the things that really bother me when we get to this, and we ain't gonna talk about this because it's a whole show too. We talk about the system and crooked cops and Black people, especially, want to hold other Black cops to a standard that they can't do. Why don't y'all tell them? Why don't y'all tell them? And I challenge you. Look at most of the conspiracies. Most of the time we're not involved. Most of the time we're not involved. And don't get me wrong, the dirty Black cops are usually, in my experiences, money is causing them to be what they are. But as far as just doing corruption as a big group, like you see on some of these TV shows, that's something we have no control of. We don't get invited to those parties, and when they see us, they quickly remove us. When, as Joe was saying, when they put us in our different zones, you'll see that we get put in the unsafe zone, they get put in a better zone, and the 6 of them in the safe zone is one of us in the unsafe zone. So a lot of stuff we don't see. We don't see them. And people keep saying, oh, why don't y'all tell one? You can't tell what you don't see. You're not tell people. In my experience, Serpico should have been a black guy. I got a chance to see some things only because I kept ending up in the wrong place and I was a little nosy. And when I don't feel any shame about testifying against the 2 crooked cops that I saw. I could prove that they were crooked. I did what I was supposed to do. I let the chief know first. They blew me off. So I went to the GBI because I had proof. There was no more speculation that they were doing wrong. I was given factual evidence, which is what we all operate off of. Because I'm sure Joe in his career can say there were quite a few officers he was suspicious of. But if he had to bet his career on the way he do it, no, he didn't have any factual basis. But it's like, yeah, if I have a choice, I don't want to work with this guy. I don't want to work with that guy. But these are hunches and suspicions. Most of the time we don't have tangible proof. We just got a feeling. When I got tangible proof, I don't have a choice. I didn't have a choice based on my oath, but to do something about it. And when we talk about this, it's hard. I don't know. They ain't stealing nothing in front of me. They're not using the N-word in front of me. They're not making jokes in front of me. I don't see it. But if you don't tell, who's to tell? And I had sent Mo something, and I'm sure Joe knows about it. There was and I hate I didn't put it in the chat. I want to say Baltimore, the DA's office had a list of dirty cops whose testimony was tainted, whose reports were tainted. See, that's a agent of change. See, she had tangible proof. She had a record of everything. In Joe's department, if there are 300 officers, Joe can keep up with one all the time. That's him. If he got a partner, that may be 2. Joe can't keep up with the other 500, 600. He don't know what they're doing. He don't get to see all the reports. He don't know the complaints. He don't know what they've been written up for. But the DA's office and elected officials, y'all remember I keep talking to y'all about these elected officials. They got all these reports that are sketchy, that say the same thing over and over and over again. So she compiled a list of officers that they don't take at face value no more. She compiled the list. See, that's something that can be done, but you'd rather hold me accountable. You ain't elected me. Hold your elected officials accountable. And this is where I harp on Black people, especially being slaves to slavery. You can change the system. You live in Black districts, but you won't vote because yours don't count. So when you get this mayor and you're primarily a Black town who hires a racist chief, that's self-inflicted because y'all could have overran them. When me and Roy started this, I think it was Ferguson who called in, and I had to do the research. What was it, Ferguson, or it was some little city? And they kept,
it was Ferguson.
It was Ferguson, and I did the research for him. You are 75% Black. You 75. So how do y'all keep ending up with these white people? Nobody wants to vote. So you let the 25% run you. All you got to do is vote. Tell these drug boys, I ain't supposed to give you this game plan, but I seen it in other places. Tell these little dope boys who are Robin Hood, they really doing it because they trying to help you out. Tell them to get together and send one of these little smart Black kids to college and get a political science degree. Elect him mayor. Yeah, system is solved. Now you got somebody who's looking out for you and who's gonna make your system better. There are ways to do it. Voting is the #1 way, but you got to know who you're voting for and why. What were you gonna say, Joe?
Look, man, there's so much to unwrap in that, but let me just start with the first one. Across the country, when your testimony is taken, it's called being Brady. Every state has a list of officers that have been Brady'd. Check it out. Now, some will make it public, some won't. But the one who has it in every state and every county is your DA. They have the list. Now, and let me go to another step. Across this country, the most elite units are detective divisions. Hear me out. Detective divisions from New York, LA to Florida to Texas are the ones who put the charges on people. They're the ones who put the felonies on, the heavy felonies. Go find out how many black officers are there. You might be surprised, because I can tell you for a fact that our numbers have decreased instead of increasing in this city. And why is that? Because that is the power. I made more money as a detective than captains and commanders. Now, that was overtime, it was blood money, but it wasn't also overtime. That's another issue in itself. But the third thing I have to address is this. When people say, and particularly our people, my vote don't count. If it didn't count, then why are they trying so hard to keep you from it? In the Constitution, when they wrote it, it made you 3/5 of a person. That was to give power to the southern states so they could have equal representation. So even if a slave, you counted, but yet you deny yourself for what our people died for. This whole thing of education, this whole thing of police protection, it's all got a basis in voting. Now think about this. All of us have heard and seen stories of someone getting an unfair sentence. How do you get to a jury? You have to be a registered voter. So next time I hear one of you people say, oh, he got a raw deal, the first thing I ask is, are you a registered voter? Because you can't complain if you're not willing to stand guard at the gate.
And for those that are, when you got that jury summons, did you immediately start thinking of a way to get out of jury duty? Did you? And if you are, then you are a part of the problem. Yes. See, me and Joe can't get on jury duty. I don't care how many summons we get. As soon as we tell them, they say, anybody here been in law enforcement? See, me and Joe want to lie. But you ain't supposed to lie, but we want to lie because we know when we raise our hand, we know. We ain't going to be the first person because they don't want to look like they don't like us. But after they get rid of that first person, we next. All right, you can go. You can. They don't even give you no reason. You already know that you're going to get gone.
Look, on the back of that jury summons, it says, are you related to law enforcement? Have you been arrested? I mean, all the questions are there. My sister, both of my sisters were prosecutors. And I had to tell people, prosecutors, not prostitutes. Let me get that clear. So, you know, they were both federal prosecutors. My father and uncle were the police. And they won't let us sit on criminal cases, but they'll let you sit on civil. They won't let you in a criminal case where the crux of the problem is. Now, do some of these people deserve some of these sentences? Yes. And there are some that don't.
And where are we in that process? You know, when I read Mo's book, and like I said, I made notes and I got to send it to him. But there are some things that we can do. We can do. We're not as helpless as we want to be. We like to be victims, which makes us more susceptible to the law and order system because, you know, we see these little videos and we love these videos where the guy get pulled over by the police and he hollers some crazy shit about he's a Moor and he can't do this and then. Do your research. Look at all those people who claim that and find out where they are. They're all still sitting in jails with that dumbass claim. But you'll see this video shared 1,000 times. Oh, he read that man his right. Oh, he told the police off. But you don't see as what's the guy name? You don't see the rest of the story. You don't see the fact that he ended up going to jail. You don't see the fact that he's still sitting in jail with his little fake card that says that he whatever he is. You know, we know what a diplomat looks like. They got the flags, they got the tag. They're not driving Hertz cars. They're not driving Hyundais. And even diplomats know the rules. Once you get out of that vehicle and put your foot on the concrete, you become a regular citizen. That's why they don't like going places if they're gonna do something. They ain't But most diplomats don't. But these are things that we have to know. And they're so easy to find out. When I hear people, they call me, they crying, they whining about this and about that, and I look up the information and I pull some tapes and I was like, you left this part out. Oh, well, I didn't think it was important. Well, the law says you can't do this. That's a dumb law, maybe, but he charged you appropriately for the dumb law. And you know, and that's why, Joe, I like having Mo here, like I said, because sometimes I get caught up in trying to educate that I miss little points. and more keep me grounded. And which is why I invited you to this show, Joe, because we disagreed on a few things. And there's nothing like having, again, tools on your intellectual knowledge built so you'll know where to go or where to look for stuff. Because I can tell you things over and over again, but if you don't want to hear them, like children, maybe you need to hear it from somebody else. Go ahead, Mo.
So hold on. Yeah, no, I just got this question because, you know, from somebody that's not in law enforcement, you know, I got a question for you guys. Maybe it's a good question, maybe it's not, but I'm asking it anyway. If law enforcement people have sworn to an oath, why is it that the court goes out of their way to keep them from being on a jury?
You want me to answer? I can
go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me just say this. Because there's a presumption, that's probably the best word I can use. There's a presumption that we would be tainted against that individual because we are in law enforcement. But that's only on the criminal side. I have been on 2 federal civil juries and actually was a foreman of one. So it's only on the criminal side. And here's the other thing. They don't want you to be put in a position, allegedly, to automatically assume that the policeman's telling the truth. On that vein, I could see their positions. However, in this 2022, the police are absolutely not taking that as being the harbingers of truthfulness anymore. Most police testimony is being impeached and impugned now. So I think that's slowly going by the wayside. The police are slowly but surely blowing themselves out the water.
And see, that's the reason I think they don't want us on there, because if you're a good cop and you hear another cop lying, now you're gonna tell these other 11 people that can't be true. This doesn't make sense. The book says this is this. The officer didn't do none of that. So now you're fighting against the home team, because all cases aren't created equal. They're just not. And you know, one of the things you learn as an investigator is that all attorneys, good or bad, if the law don't work for them, they're gonna go to emotions. They just want to win. It's not always about justice. It's about wins and losses for them. They don't want to take the L that's right. And you know, and this is why I tell people, at the end of the day, all we do as cops is arrest people. The prosecution ain't got nothing to do with us. A cop ain't never convicted nobody. Never. Because Joe worked narcotics. I'm sure, like me, he's had many a case that was dismissed or combined with something else. Nobody asked us anything. We know we got the biggest drug deal around, and all of a sudden he's free because they did some kind of plea deal or something else that had nothing to do with it. Didn't ask us nothing. Nothing. Oh, every time I tell you that Pook is selling drugs, I look up, he on the street. Man, all I can do is lock him up. What happens after that, really, I don't have no say-so in. None.
If see how this thing works. The way you divide it is post-indictment, pre-indictment and post-indictment activities. The police are concerned with pre-indictment. The DA is post-indictment. So what you make up into that point of arrest is all yours. Any decision after that to prosecute or not to prosecute, even though you may have all the evidence, is on them. So that's a post-indictment situation. And that's where we're not focusing our attention at.
Right, we're not privy to that, but these are elected officials. I arrested a guy in Cobb. I didn't know who he was at the time, but Cobb worked out a deal with him. He gave Cobb County $2 million in cash, a helicopter, and 3 houses. They gave him a misdemeanor charge. But what do you think they care about me and my reputation? $2 million talk, a helicopter talks, 3 mansions talk. He was a kingpin from what I knew of, but I looked up and 6 months later, I saw him on the street again. I'm thinking there is no way in hell he could be on the street. Not only was he on the street, he was on the street as a free man with a misdemeanor. Because I looked up to see what happened to my little thing. Oh, I didn't know they had been to trial.
Right.
It's been adjudicated. He is a misdemeanor. Ain't even what do we call it? A high and aggravated misdemeanor. It's just a regular. He got charged with simple possession. He had over 400 pounds. How do you get simple 400 pounds of anything ain't never simple possession.
We had a guy here committed a sexual assault, a rape. I'm sorry, I hate to use that term. The judge let this dude loose and based it on because he was a good religious guy and he couldn't last in jail. Did you hear what I said?
Because they're not built for it.
And I got even better one. They had a guy that was, I'll even send you the notes, had a bomb, was about to set it off at a public gathering. A judge released him saying, he's not a bad guy. Act of terrorism.
But I'm sure most of us remember the rape case for the little, I want to say Duke or Ivy League guy.
Yes.
That guy. And I tell people, it's okay to get upset, but do something after you get upset. Don't re-elect this judge. The case with the kid who did the shooting and what's the little white boy who crossed state line to shoot somebody?
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse. And everybody's like, how you think that? Look at the judge. And here we go again. The judge has a history. He has a history of dictating where his case is gonna go. Then you do his research. He's the longest tenured judge. He getting elected every 4 years like clockwork. Ain't nobody never said nothing against him.
And they never ran against him. Unopposed.
Whose fault is this? But he keeps getting reelected. So we're the silent majority because we're approving of this behavior. But, and I'm gonna use you, Mo, because me and you cool. Mo want me to do something about it, but Mo ain't gonna vote. I can't get rid of this judge. But everybody in that town said they wasn't surprised by nothing he did, none of his jury, because this is what he does. This is what he does. And if he's been locking us up and letting them go, y'all know that this is where y'all live. Oh, what can we do? He the white man, he the judge. Judges are elected officials at this level. There's a lot you can do. Every police chief is appointed by an elected mayor. Every sheriff is appointed by elections. Every governor is appointed by elections. Every single police officer, deputy sheriff, marshal that you will ever encounter is employed by somebody you elected. So why do you hold me to a higher status when I don't even get to this, but you keep electing this? In Atlanta, we finally got rid of Paul Howard. The black people knew who Paul Howard was 10, 15 years ago. You can lock up two people on the same corner, one black, one white, a kilo of cocaine, both of them got their hand in it. The white guy, at best, his worst case scenario is he's gonna get supervised probation for 6 months. The best thing that black kid can hope for, the absolute best thing that black kid can hope for is 3 months of prison time. This was a black man that was elected over and over and over, and he sent so many of us to jail. But you couldn't do nothing because we like him because he looked like us. But the police keep locking these people up. Well, see, now, ma'am, you missed the point. I locked up both of the dudes that was on that street corner. I charged both of them with the same thing. They on the same report. They on the same report. Now, do your work. And this is, you know, we get into it because I do want cops to be held to a higher standard. But our higher standard don't supersede the people that you voted for. Joe can sit back and tell on every bad cop that he's ever heard about without no proof. All they're gonna do is silence Joe. And the head gonna continue to keep bringing these same people in. I don't want to pick on Minneapolis, but I have no choice. Because again, Minneapolis just had another shooting. How many shootings is this Minneapolis police chief gonna get away with on his watch? But you know what he did? After the George Floyd thing, he was out there with the good people, kumbaya. Oh, I'm gonna make a change. Dude, all these changes were made up under you. But when do we hear his name? Can't nobody even tell you his name, but they can tell you the name of the officers who have been replaced by people who will still be trained with that same mentality that the chief has been allowing. When is he gonna get voted out? I mean, Joe, you're from Chicago. How many shootings or killings or random reckless acts by police can one police chief have in an 18-month period, and everybody keep looking at him like he okay because he sit back and he give a press conference and he shed 3 tears, and I just don't get it. I just don't get it. why these cops are so bad. I'm gonna make a change. His change is letting that one cop go to jail. After y'all watch him cry and him sing a Kumbaya song, he hires another cop who is a good cop in general. And what I tell y'all about, what's the guy name who killed George Floyd?
Chauvin.
Huh?
Chauvin.
Chauvin was made a training officer.
Yep.
Mosley, what a training officer got almost as much clout as a captain. So if a training officer with a history of abuse is telling a recruit that this is okay, this is what I've been doing, I can show you the 18 write-ups I got. I can show you the 9 times where I put my knee on somebody's neck and they said you are okay. We want you to teach this to other people. That recruit ain't got a chance. He's listening. He's being trained by somebody that the chief has said, hey, this violent guy's okay. Let him teach people. But ain't nobody challenging the chief. Everybody mad at the recruits. You listen to your trainees if you want to, your trainer if you want to joke. Go ahead, sir.
Let me illustrate a very difficult point for a lot of people to hear. During the protest up in Michigan, when they were planning to kidnap and kill the governor, listen very carefully what I said, to a man, when they went around and had all these guys with guns and militias and whatever else they called themselves, patriots, which I have a problem with, to a man, they all indicated they were registered voters. That same crew, news crew, came to Chicago and interviewed another group of people. Didn't get the same reaction. Now, you wonder why we're in the situation we're in? You wonder why the Supreme Court is the way it is? Let me just dive into that real quick. I won't take up a lot of your time. To a person, each one of these new jurists said that they were not going to overturn or even look at Roe v. Wade. They said it. It's on film. So if everything were fair and true, wouldn't they have been disqualified for lying on a job application? I mean, just think about it. Each one of them said, we are not going to touch this. And they did. Now, I will repeat what I said about that. Disregarding the religious arguments, look at it from the position of property ownership. Maybe it'll make a difference how you feel.
And again, and that's why I hate to go these routes with you guys, but you got to understand the system and stop looking at the lowest man on the totem pole to be the agent of change. All we can do when I do this show, when I get with Mo, when I call Joe, is to try to inform you. Wanda, who's on the show now, one of my favorite resources because she was part of POST, which is Police Officer Standard and Training. She could advise me on some things that were or were not going on. Remember I told you, you look at some of these officers, especially in Minnesota, all they're doing is bounce from agency to agency to agency because they're quitting before something comes up. There is no true system of balance and checks to stop a bad officer from reapplying somewhere else. So guess what? Because I know we got 3 here in the metro area who were under investigation by Fulton County Sheriff's Department who are now with other agencies. One, they had to pay a lawsuit for sexual harassment, but now he's a supervisor with another local agency. Part of his settlement was that he could no longer supervise, understand this now, he could no longer supervise female employees, not inmates. He could no longer supervise female employees because he was a predator. That was what was told to Fulton County. Now he's with another agency where he gets to supervise female officers.
Man, let me take you out to another route real quick. I want everyone to go look at the consent decrees for Chicago, New York, LA, Florida, and I believe it's Texas. And you'll find the uniqueness of each one. They all say the same thing. We have a problem with institutional racism. Now, wait a minute. You got 5 different departments that are having the same issues. They also not only talk about the institutional racism, they also go over to what's called the span of control. Now, most departments have one sergeant, maybe 10 officers. That's too large. The span of control is too much because he or she cannot legitimately function in their position as a supervisor to properly conduct their men. Now, if we're a military operation, if we were truly paramilitary operation, we would address that in the first instance. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
So now that's phase one. The second phase, what you just hit on, DV, is the whole idea of a national police reformation act. Didn't they just punt that? Didn't all these big patriots and rah, 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 we love the police? Didn't they just kill a bill for veterans? These same guys that stood up in your face and told you those were patriots that stormed the Capitol, and for the first time in United States history, ran a Confederate battle flag through the U.S. Capitol. There's never been a Confederate battle flag in the U.S. Capitol, but they're patriots. How many officers have died? I got police officers here that won't even speak to me because they're patriots. I said, what about the 10 officers that died? No one died. What? Last time I checked, yeah. They've got pictures of people hitting police officers with poles, veterans hitting other policemen with poles, fire extinguishers, but they're veterans. But I tell you what, I dare any one of you to tell me what would have happened if that had been a bunch of black folks. I'm waiting. I'm listening.
And we got the proof. When the black people showed up, I forgot what town it was, there was a ton of cops there. When the BLM, or yes, maybe it was Angel, showed up, there was tons of cops. Yep. And you know, like I say, I get it. I get why we're angry, but we got to be more organized,
focused.
We got to have a plan and understand this. This is something I tell everybody. The plan that we have will not happen in 3 years. We have to be prepared to ride this out to affect changes. True change does not happen overnight. When change happens overnight, the only change that should happen overnight, and I'm gonna stay by this, is every sheriff, most police chiefs have the ability to change policy just like that. Remember, Minneapolis got rid of the chokehold just like that. Just like that. There's no time frame for that. You can change policies immediately, but to change the mindset, for us to start holding the right people accountable, for Mo to not look at Joe and DVP, but for Mo to look at Joe and DVP's boss and say, hey, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't complaints open records? Why don't you have a list of complaints so that when an officer does something crazy, before the public thinks ain't nothing gonna be done, they can see he has a history of this. More complaints are killed by the public not saying anything because they believe in this code of silence. But if Mo complaining to me about somebody, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm gonna tell Mo what he can do until I get proof. But you gotta launch the first complaint. And we've seen more and more officers go to prison. You yes. See, when me and Joe get a chance and you give us information, we'll tell you that officer's wrong. We can't tell you wrong. If you ever tell me officer wrong because he cursed you out, I can honestly tell you I'm not gonna listen. I need something tangible that he did. Did he hit you? Did he lock you up? Did he steal something? Him talking harshly, I just don't give a shit. Some days we just like y'all, we have bad days. So if his language wasn't to your appeal, I hate it for you. I truly do hate it for you, but get over it. But tell me what he did that amounted to a criminal act, and you got me. I will be there for you to tell you what to do. I've had people inbox me and I told them how to do open records. I told them how to look here, look there. But if they truly wanted the system to be fair, you'd have a list of complaints on every officer when they file them so that there can be that, so you can look. So now it's public. When they terminate you, and what did I tell y'all about termination? When your department terminates you, which is the worst thing that can be done right now, is your record gets closed upon termination. Your investigation closes upon termination. They should all be suspended with pay, because suspended with pay only means I'm letting you burn all the leave time I would have had to pay you for anyway. I'm gonna suspend you with pay pending the investigation. Because when you suspend it with pay, once your leave time runs out, so does your pay. But now you get a fair, you get a fair investigation in some cases. but you can't go to another agency because you have a pending investigation. You have a pending investigation. Some agencies will not let you quit under good circumstances if you try to retire. I'm sorry, not retire. If you try to resign pending an investigation. They will not give you a good referral.
Right. Correct.
But if you quit before all that, there's to my understanding, legally there's nothing that can be said. This is something that we have to stop. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something you have to stop. All I can do is tell you how. We have to go forward in numbers. In numbers.
All right, so look.
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead, DVP.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I just wanted to, from the civilian side of things, I just want to say, I think one of the big problems is the civilian complaint process. I see, I'm like everybody else. I watch Facebook, you guys got the direct information, but I mean, that seems to be a linchpin in trying to move the needle forward to try to get something done within departments, because just to even file a complaint, you got to go through some BS in order to even get it into the system. And then I guarantee that most people who do that have no faith in the system to work.
Let me hop on that one. And I can tell you from what it looks like here. First off, one of the things that helps is how transparent is your department. For us, all of our general orders, complaint review process are online, so anybody can pick them up and look at them. Now, and I have to digress just for a second. The power of what we're talking about, as DVP said, it won't be overnight, but understand something. There's two power players in this whole thing, the Senate and the United States Congress. Now understand, you only got 100 senators, you got 400 congressmen. The 400 congressmen run every 2 years, every 24 months. The United States Senate runs every 6 years. You have two opportunities right now in Atlanta to do something about it. You got Herschel Walker, who talks about air being bad in China, versus Warnock, who's a genius, as far as I'm concerned.
That's a bad comparison because my flashlight is a genius compared to Herschel Walker. So,
well, the fact is he's still on the ballot now. There again in lies what they think of us, because they'll put a shell game in front of us to make it look palatable, because you're not supposed to be that smart and understand what the game is. The game is afoot. We got to quit playing checkers. They playing chess. So again, understand that this whole reformation can happen, but it is not going to happen on a national scale till we take the Senate back. Now, we can sit here all night and I can tell you what happened and how it happened. That's neither here nor there. But if we want this thing to start, the ship to correct itself, it has to start there, because all the Senate dictates, the House legislates. Now listen to me very well. It's 400 in one room and 100 in another. Who got the big bat? Where the millionaires at? Most of them are in the Senate.
And how bad do we want it? How bad?
I rest my case.
I look at a lot of things, and one of the last things I wanted to touch, well, not last, but one of the things I wanted to touch on was the Breonna Taylor thing. Oh. How it's taken this long to get where we are is a true indictment of the system. And I'm sure that, and I'm gonna let Joe speak first, because y'all done heard me enough. We've done search warrants. We've been on teams. We've executed them. We've written them. We've seen search warrants that we didn't even believe in. We knew that they were suspect. Where is the accountability, the culpability? And I tell you, and I'm gonna let Joe talk, but in the civil term, because I learned this because I was a great instructor, there's negligent retention, negligent entrustment, negligent supervision. These are things that your police chiefs and sheriffs can be held accountable for. That whole thing, that whole Breonna Taylor thing, and Lord knows I've been on way too many search warrants. To me, that was one of the most disgusting things I have seen in law enforcement. When I listened to why they were shooting, Joe know this, we're told over and over again, every bullet that you let go, you need to know where it's going, what it's supposed to hit. You got to be accountable for that bullet. If you miss, it's okay to miss, but you had better been shooting at a good target. Some of these, I heard, I'll say, he saw gunfire and he shot. So you don't even know who you shooting. But I'm gonna sit back and let Joe talk, and then I'm gonna let Mo ask some questions about why this took so long, how it took so long, and go. Damn, I need some tequila. Go ahead, Joe.
Let me just start by saying the first thing is get rid of that DA, that black person. I'll leave it at that. But let me just say this: the New York Times did a reenactment, and myself and Stan have already gone through it, and we'll share with you guys. If you look at that, number one, is a horrible warrant.
Horrible.
Number two, if you look at the shield placement, the way we're trained, shield placement was bad. And again, most of you all won't understand this, but let me just go to the crux of it. When I first heard the warrant of them executing it, and the SWAT unit was 10 miles away. Normally in those size departments, that's exactly what the SWAT units are utilized for. In my mind, right off the bat, I thought they were a stick-up crew. And to this day, you can't change my mind. Now, that being said, let me address the shooting.
Hold on, let me interrupt you, Joe, before you go to the shooting, because you said something and I tried to avoid it, but you agitated me.
Good.
A stick-up crew. Joe, you done warrants, and ladies and gentlemen, stop watching TV.
Yes.
When you have a high-risk warrant, you've been on drug units. When do we execute high-risk warrants? Don't we sit in the car and let the highly trained guys go get shot at first? We don't do that shit. I sit in the car with my radio listening and say, it's the next door. SWAT teams execute high-risk warrants. And if you look at the information, and y'all ain't gonna look at it like me and Joe do, but there was no information that the guy they were looking for had been at that house in 6 months.
He was at the other address. She had a new boyfriend.
How do you miss all that in your active investigation? Go ahead, Joe. You made my heart skip 2 beats.
Let me just deal with one aspect. I mean, there's so many on there, but let me just do the one guy. And I heard a police officer defend this knucklehead. I believe it was Erickson fired 10 shots through 2 covered windows. Based on the outline of the layout of the building, he could not have possibly have seen any gunfire. So number one, he lied. So now what happens when you lie to a grand jury or any jury? It's called perjury, which means it's a fireable offense and it's a chargeable offense if you had a state's attorney worth a sex term. So it's just so many. The SWAT commander in his interview said, we knew when we heard it that this was, and he used the word cluster.
Charlie Foxtrot.
He said it. He said it on tape. The G has it. They are going to indict those 4 guys. Now, the idea of wanton, I disagree with. I think it should have been outright murder. But the fact that they're getting something, and civil rights, I said it when I first heard it, they're going to get them for civil rights deprivation, and that's where they're going. But there's so much. When you're ready, I'll break it all down. But as far as warrants, I can tell you, both DVP and I, we know whose warrants we're going on. Trust me. There are some guys I would trust to stand in front of me with a bucket of water.
I caught the flu for 1 warrant. I mean, I'm talking 3 minutes before oh no, I gotta go. But go ahead, Mo. You the lay person. Mo, go ahead and ask those questions, because I don't know the right questions to ask us.
No, I just want to add this comment. Okay, so what we're talking about here, the thing that I want to bring up from the civilian point of view is that you think about your life. Every service, everything you do has insurance and liability. So, you think about, if you want to take a plane, you got the FAA. If you want to, if there's drugs you got to take, you got the FDA, and there's other accountable services. So Now you got this situation here. Who is accountable when let's call it a mistake. We'll call it that for now. I know everybody probably sees this differently, but let's call it a mistake. So when a mistake like this happens, who is the accountable party? Where are the accountable people?
But let me be the first to answer that. First off, let's not call it a mistake. Let's call it what it is: outright murder. So that's the first thing.
Malice murder.
Well, whatever you call it, still murder. The M is there. So that's number one. The second thing is it starts with, understand this, when you go to get a warrant, you have to swear in front of a judge that this is true. Now, in our system, there's a whole line of responsibility from the sergeant, from the patrolman himself to the sergeant to lieutenant on up. So who would bear the main responsibility? His sergeant should be hammered, and that lieutenant should be hammered, because that's who had to go in front of the judge. Because if you look at the term, it says affiant, I swear to this. And they lied. They not only lied on where it was and who it was. They said they had a poll cam up. They didn't. They said they had been watching this guy's car. They didn't. They said they had a postal inspector tell them that there were drugs being delivered. The postal inspector said, we don't know what you're talking about. Now, let me just use that as a staying area. There's not a department in this country that does not have to use the U.S. Postal Service inspector if it comes to a crime being committed within the postal system. They lied. So now you're actually interfering with a federal agency. So now you're looking at another charge. So the criminality involved, I think, runs much deeper than what we're looking at. And then someone on here said, be reminded it took the Justice Department to get this done. But let me just say this, people. I'm not a fan of Biden. But if this had been somebody else's Justice Department, you would not have got this. I'll say that. And I stand on it.
And Mo, I belong to a task force, one of the best task force I ever belonged to. I liked everything they did. When Joe came with a warrant, the first thing that we did as a unit, he read his warrant. Our job was to pick it apart. Even if we liked it, our job was to take that warrant apart before we could do anything. You had to have 100% agreement from the team before we ever did a warrant. This was all the investigators, the sergeant and the lieutenant. Before you can go to a judge, you had to go through the 6 of us. If anybody had a problem with it, we did not do it. That was how we took care of ourselves as a unit. Everybody bought into it. The affiant, which is the guy who goes to the judge, he is the one who is most responsible.
Yep.
At his level. And I'm gonna say what Joe said. The supervisor who oversees all of us investigators, because sometimes investigators get emotional. They get wrapped up in cases and they lose sight of their professionalism. It just happens sometimes, for whatever reason, it can happen. The supervisor is supposed to make sure that they don't happen. And because the judges got immunity. When you say things to judges, now judges are a little bit more careful. But back in the day, if you told a judge something, judges believed us without question. Ever since the Neal Street shooting here in Atlanta, man, to get a warrant now, it's almost a 45-minute meeting with the judge. They got their own little checklist that you got initial things that you swear to happen before they even listen to your information. Did you see this personally? Did you do this personally? Ain't no more going in and I shake hands with the judge who knows I'm of good high moral standing, and I sit there and tell him my spiel. And he said, raise your hand. Oh, ain't no more of that here in Atlanta. Ain't no more of that. How they did what they did, like I said, just looking at it from a professional level, I don't know too many cops, legitimate, who can even think that anything that was done was a mistake. See, a mistake is putting 731 when I mean 713. That's a mistake. A mistake is putting red door when it's actually maroon. That's a mistake. Lying about facts of the case, they're not mistakes. That's an outright lie. Saying that I saw this we've never executed a warrant. We've never executed a warrant where we didn't have an agent sitting outside the house for at least 4 hours before we went in, because we're not going to execute until we know that the person that we're looking for or the product that we're looking for is in there. We're not going to go in blind. We sat on houses for 48 hours waiting for people to come home.
Yeah.
And when they came home, we rallied up the troops and went in. But everybody was on high alert. As soon as they come, hey, y'all got 45 minutes to get back to the station. Don't go out of town. It was worse than being in prison because we couldn't do nothing. But somebody always had eyes on that house, or they had eyes on that person. We never went in blind. Never. So
I got one more for you, D. You like this one? Think about this. How come none of those officers had body cams? SWAT team did. The patrol officer that pulled up did. Not a one had a body cam.
And that's standard equipment now. That's standard equipment.
I said what I said. I stand.
Remember, I told y'all about one of the cases they gave me. I want to say it was New Orleans. It was 2 officers in particular. Every time they did a traffic stop, well, not every time, but when you look at the traffic stops in question, every single one of them had something. They all had traffic cams. Every single time they did traffic stops against a particular group of people, they raised the hood of the car so that you couldn't see what they were doing. They didn't do this all the time. They just did this once every 5 or 6 stops. And all the people that they stopped when it happened just happened to fit the same general description. Could it have been a coincidence? Absolutely not. And it's like, they showing you right there what they doing. Why they raising the hood? Oh, they say the engine need to breathe. They ain't a taxi. That's a taxi move from way back. They don't even do that no more. Cars don't need that. They showing you where they're wrong. And this is not that hard to find. But our oversight system sucks to high hell. It sucks to high hell because no agency should ever investigate itself. Ever, never. The minute you hear that, go on and say, you know, and I know some of them are good, but Joe can't investigate his wife. After this, Joe can't investigate DVP. He knows me. Even if we not close, intimate friends, it's there. You need to have no connection, and that should be a standard.
And let me just add to this, because I wrote a couple books, and what DVP is saying is evident when you do proofreading of your own writing. It's impossible to do.
Right.
If you have a mistake, you'll read that mistake perfectly 12,000 times. It's going to take somebody else to come in, proofread it to find a mistake.
And Sam, I don't know why the officers ain't charged for lying, because the bulk of what we do, whether we swear in front of a judge, the bulk of what we do is we're swearing what we don't do. That everything that we do, we're swearing to is the truth. When we write a report, we're swearing everything we put in that report is true. That's why we don't give jury value. That's why we don't call things gold or silver or diamonds. We'll put yellow and color necklace. Right. We will not give it value because we can't swear to that.
Right.
So we're always under oath. Whenever we put that polyester on or put that or that badge or that shield, we're under oath. And it sucks that it's not taken seriously by those of us who do this because we want the system to work. And we talk about the DA, again, an elected official. Why is the DA still there? The same reason that the DA was in Georgia, with all that stuff that happened with Ahmaud Arbery, all those loose leaks, all those communications with the district attorney. Why does she still have a job? Let's see if she get reelected. Because, and what I tell you before, we will forget the name of power players. We'll call out Breonna Taylor's name. We'll call out George Floyd's name. We'll call out Kyle Rittenhouse's name. But when we call out the judges that let these people go free, we call out the DAs who either improperly charged these people or did a crappy prosecution. We won't call out their names. And that's how they fester for so long and become cancerous to our society, because nobody will call out these people's names. It's like we scared to say Candyman. We didn't call out whose house Candyman was at. We called out Candyman. Until we start calling out judges, DAs, sheriffs, mayors, we're going to keep living this same loop, stuck in the matrix over and over again. Change comes from acknowledgement. Remember, we started to show off. Me, Joe, Mo, we all think we're smart guys. We all think we're responsible human beings. We think we in check of our emotions. But the first thing I started off with is that our wives knew us better than we knew ourselves. At a moment when we might have done something foolish, they waited to tell us. So we were at a point where we couldn't do nothing because they understood that as much as we love them, as smart as we may be, when they are threatened, we become emotional. We might make irrational decisions. So our wives looked out for us. And they didn't tell us in real time. They told us later something that was really foul had happened. They saved us from ourselves. That we got to start saving ourselves from ourselves. Don't blame Joe for what's going on. Don't blame DVP. Don't blame Mo. Call out DAs. It took us 20 years to get rid of Paul Howard. That was 27 years too late. It took us that long. It took Ferguson 12 or 15 years to get rid of the problems that they had, that it was documented. They were keeping track of all the atrocities, but they thought they couldn't do nothing about it. When I talk about civilian review boards, every single agency in my mind should have a civilian review board, and they should all go through police training so they will at least know what the police have been trained to do or should be thinking. Let them sit on the review boards and see if it makes sense to them. Because at some point, me and Joe do become tainted to certain things. There are times when I would say we have to admit that we ain't looking at everything with a full view. We try, but there are times we just not. As most said, sometimes we see a blank and we fill it in saying this is probably what he meant. We're not sure, but this is what we think, because this is what we would have did. It's easy to tell gross negligence. It's hard to tell sometimes when somebody's just simply ignorant or they just missed the point because they were trying to do too much. Because as Joe said, he's taking people home in this patrol car. That's probably a 2-day suspension.
Easy.
We've all done things that we shouldn't have done. Are they criminal? Are they criminal? And that to me is the difference. I've done things that I shouldn't have done, that I violate somebody's civil rights. I freely have admitted that I've come across drug dealers that I had no legal right to search, but I searched them anyway. And I put their drugs in the drain because I knew they couldn't explain how they lost X amount of drugs and then go to jail. That was wrong. That was wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I can't just search somebody because I feel like he's a drug dealer. I said this, but my intent was to get them drugs off the street. And that's what I did. Because who was he gonna complain to? Was he gonna complain to internal affairs and say, hey, your officer took my drugs and put them down the, he put them down the drain? Now, I got a contract out on me because they want to know why I don't have the money. You can't complain about contraband. It was a calculated risk. Joe took somebody home out of the goodness of his heart. That's not in his policy and procedure handbook. It ain't nowhere. He ain't never been trained for this. I'm willing to bet he ain't never been trained for this. But he was a human at that moment. He was a human who had a little power. And he abused his authority for the good of people. Am I right, Joe? If I'm being, he abuses. So can Joe sit back in here and do like DVP and tell a lie, say we've never done anything wrong or even illegal? Of course we can. But did we harm people by doing something illegal? And that's what you got to look at, because all good cops have made good, bad decisions. It's just part of the job. It's part of the job.
Well, we're still human. I mean, that's what makes us.
Stop playing, Joe. We terrorists. We can't push the narrative that we might be good cops for real, because that would go against everything that people believe.
You're right.
So, but you know, people will get mad at us with the quickness. But you can fire Joe. You can fire DVP. But if you leave Derek Chauvin in charge of training officers, every good officer you get is going to be tainted by somebody you put in a position of power to make them think something. Who put them in this position of power? We don't get to vote on who get to be training officers. We don't get to vote. So when Joe come in and Joe get trained by officer who tell him, hey, put your knee on his neck. Joe like, no, I want to do it. Hey, man, do you want a job? Joe got a decision making because he want his family to eat. And sometimes that pressure Yeah, it's like, I need to get through this. I ain't gonna do it again. We look at Uvalde. And somebody said, man, they were cowards. And I said, you can't give them that. A coward is somebody who's afraid of something. Joe, did anybody look like they were afraid? Did anybody look afraid?
D, I got to tell you, I might have to go against you on this one.
No, we're going to get to where they were, but did anybody look afraid? When you're afraid, do you sanitize your hand? Do you Facebook? Do you call somebody? They weren't afraid. They were just shitty people. But go ahead, give me your perspective, Uvalde.
I think you just gave me the main one. I mean, you got a guy sanitizing his hand?
Right. So
see, for me, that's insulting to me, because having been one of those guys that, you get a man with a gun call, every car in my district is rolling because we want to get that gun. Because that's one gun that could be used against somebody else and one of our brethren. So for me, I had a problem when I saw them grouped up and not somebody going ahead. So I might have to agree with that call, because again, you hear the shots going off, you hear these kids. There was nothing in the world that would have stopped me. I wouldn't give it, unless Jesus himself, and he couldn't have stopped me.
He better snatch that gun out of my hand.
That point. So now let's go back to what you just said. Yes, they were cowards. I'm sorry. Their actions were cowardice, cowardlike, cowardly. The fact that they didn't go further, they grouped up. You heard all these shots going off. Man, I'd have been going through that window with all the equipment them guys had. And remember, they put one guy in cuffs. The one guy whose kid was there, they actually locked up one or put cuffs on one of their own because his kid, and he told him, I'm going in. Look, what you talking about?
Oh, and I just want to add to this. I just want to add a comment. Somebody once said, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Oh, Lord.
We had a whole bunch of good guys with guns. What happened?
Well, I think I answered that partially.
Yeah.
But I would tell you this. A good guy with a gun is determined historically by when and how you take or his or her action.
Exactly.
And that's probably my best answer.
Exactly.
And ladies and gentlemen, I ain't trying to make me and Joe out to be nothing more than what we are. All we're doing is presenting you with facts and observations. Take from it what you will. But we have got to start making changes, and you got to quit looking at the bottom of the totem pole to make a change. The foundation, even though we're taught this, and it's the biggest lie going, is that all shit roll downhill. The foundation of every department is this leadership. It's what's solid. The line officers up here at the top, we swaying in the wind. We're swaying. We can all fall off. This is the foundation. And nobody's attacking the foundation because they'll sit back and kumbaya with us and tell us what they're going to do. As for these changes, give them a time frame for these changes to become an effect.
Well, let me add this. Brother Drake said that they were not afraid, they were following bad leadership. I would disagree with that totally. And let me tell you why I disagree with that. When you go to the academy, you are trained to have independent thought, however, to work in a group consensus. That being said, however, once that call comes out, man with a gun or a man with a gun in a school, you are the leadership. You take by order, at least in our system, the first man on the scene is the leader.
He's the incident commander. Until he relieved.
You have no choice. I mean, the saying is, some are born into greatness, others have greatness thrust upon them. Well, guess what? Greatness is then thrust upon you, and you have to act accordingly. No, I'm not giving them any room on this one. I can't, because guess what? It ain't over. So the next guy is going to say, well, wait, I'm going to wait for an incident commander. No, no. That's why we are still a paramilitary organization. And if you can't understand it, you're in the wrong business. because these times dictate new policies and procedures. And the first thing you're sworn to is protect the lives of the citizens. Now, it may cost you yours, but that's what you signed up for. At least that's what I signed up for.
And I tried to defend to a certain point, because even though we've said we risk our life, I ain't gonna never tell nobody to be stupid. Now, and I said this before, if I'm sitting there with my 40 caliber handgun and the guy is 300 yards in a hallway with a rifle, it's stupid for me to try to attack him.
Correct.
This isn't where they were. When most of this happened, there was a shield there. There were people with long guns. See, now most officers get long guns. When I was coming through, only certain officers got long guns. Yeah, you shouldn't try to fight with a handgun somebody more than 25 yards. You might as well commit suicide. And guess what? The insurance ain't gonna pay because you committed a stupid act. But in this instance, they had the means to overtake that. They had the means to overtake that. The training is pretty much systematic. Me and Joe McNair train together, but we got a simple understanding of what the training is. We got a simple understanding. There may be we may have to have a quick little talk about certain things we're gonna say, or we're gonna have a quick little 12 conversation. Joe, I'm going left, you go right. There's no time to say, Joe, you right-handed, left-handed. One of us is gonna say, you go this way, you go. All we're gonna do from that point, it's given. We're engaging.
Man, they had 10 long guns. They had 10 long guns to one.
And they had shields. So when I look at this is another failure of the system, and we got all these people talking about who was in charge. Yeah, that's a fight for later.
Right.
That's a fight for later. See, the system says that if I'm involved in a car chase, I need permission from a supervisor. You know why? Because again, ego gets involved. Ego gets involved. So most places want a supervisor who ain't attached to the scene because we don't like losing. We truly don't. But when there's an active shooter, I don't need anybody's permission to address that situation. There ain't time. I'm going in, especially if I think I got better than a 50-50 chance. Like I said, if he got a long gun and it's a straight hallway,
no,
I'm sorry. People, until somebody else get here, I'm not finna take that risk. But once he locks himself up into a store, long gun or not, the store ain't that long. I'm an adequate shooter at 25 yards. I'm an adequate shooter. If I got a shield, a real shield, and another player with me, oh yeah, oh, we doing this. Don't mess around and let me get a third player. Oh yeah, we doing this. You know,
give me two.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It's a wrap with two people. With three, I'm overconfident. I might be beside myself.
Right.
But but this is where we have to sit back. Yeah, on this instance specifically, yes, a lot of the officers are to blame. A lot of them are to blame. I've been on scenes where an incident commander showed up, or a captain or whatever, and they took control. That's fine. In the 15, 20 minutes it take you to get here. But them 15, 20 minutes, if it's that important, I ain't waiting for you to do nothing. As Joe talked about earlier, I'm gonna call out on radio. We going forth and sending no more. Because all already gonna do is say, stop all traffic. Let 1266 have a radio. Everybody else go somewhere else, but don't nobody talk right now. And that's it. I'm the incident commander. Everybody's listening for what I am doing or to see where I am. And that's what that is. And I looked up coward, so I'm gonna acquiesce. Coward is the right word. But for me, I'm thinking coward isn't scared. They weren't scared. They just didn't want to. They weren't scared. They didn't want to. They did not want to. There is no way you can tell me a responsible police officer can hear a child crying, hear shots, and you're thinking, damn, I need hand sanitizer. What in the fuck?
So you disagree? So now are we playing semantics? So that wasn't cowardly?
According to and see, that's what I'm saying. See, and that's where I have to acquiesce. My definition of coward had more to do with being afraid than being just a shitty person. But I looked up the definition. Coward is the correct phrase. Somebody who didn't do it. I'm gonna give you that one. But they weren't scared. They weren't scared. They weren't scared. They were just shitty people.
Okay.
Mo, what you got for me, Mo?
Yeah, no, I mean that whole situation, I can't even call it, man. I watched from afar, I don't know as much background as you guys know, but just from a civilian perspective, there should have been a protocol. It's almost like there was no protocol in place when I guess it was the captain is not available, or whoever it is. When that person's not available, there's no protocol. Okay, there's nothing in this world that works like that. There's always a secondary, a third, fourth protocol to be followed when the first one can't be followed for one reason or another, which was this case. So that right there, I'm just at a loss as a civilian in watching this whole thing to just say whatever system or process they have in place, it needs to get revisited quickly.
And there is a protocol, but not like what you think of. Like if, again, I'm using me and Joe. If me and Joe are doing something and it's slightly risky, me and Joe, we running shit. Now when SWAT show up and tell us to back off, then we gonna act like we're good cops and we're gonna acquiesce to Scott. We're gonna acquiesce because somebody can assume control from us if they outrank us and they're better at what they do. But there is no automatic, because there are times when ranking supervisors will show up and they won't say nothing because they have no idea. That's when you got a good supervisor. They don't know what's going on. Right now, me and Joe can't debrief them. All they're gonna say is be safe and wait for us to come out to debrief them. But in the middle of what's going on, me and Joe can't debrief them while we got a shooter in the mall. We ain't got time to be sitting on the radio talking about, oh, he did this and that. Me and Joe got to talk to each other. We ain't got time for outside distractions. And that's one of those things where it is crucial to understand the system and talk to somebody who's in the system versus somebody who watches Law and Order every week. And like I said, and that's part of why I like having you around, Mo, because sometimes me and Joe, we may speak and we know what we're talking about, but it may not be common English, layman's English to a regular person.
Because I still don't understand why so if we just chalk this up as a major failure, that's one reason why no auxiliary protocols were followed. Okay, I can accept that and just say it was a major failure. But my question would be, what is the typical protocol in a situation like this?
Let me help you with that. Since 2009, I believe there's been over 200 mass shootings. If we look at the protocols developed after Columbine, that will give you some enlightenment as to what should have taken place. From Columbine to these other shootings, they all have, all the agencies have done what's called a post-mortem. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? The problem is, at least in my mind, is getting the public to understand that this ain't TV, number one. And number two, there will be loss of life. People are not ready for the actualities of what's coming towards us because of the proliferation of weapons in this country. What we had just recently, Highland Park. But now, during that same week of Highland Park, over the weekend, there was 40 people shot across the city of Chicago. 7 dead in Highland, but 40 dead in Chicago.
And very little written about Chicago.
So now we're taking another spin. But to go back to the base question, the fact remains, at least in my mind, that a lot of these people are afraid of this thing called a pen because they cannot justify, or they cannot articulate why they took the action they took. And you'd be surprised how many people are scared of that paper, and it causes them conflict in their action. I know this sounds crazy, but if you talk to some patrolmen, you will find out that they are so afraid of doing paper that this causes a mental infarction and it locks them up.
Yep.
And I think in this case, you saw a lot of that. They locked up. They vapor locked. You saw an engine shut down when in fact that engine should have been running smoother. The fact that you had one officer on the ground, that's when this knucklehead first started running toward the school, they should have dropped him. There's an officer that saw him with the rifle approaching the school grounds and didn't take action. Now, could he have potentially stopped this tragedy. Yes. But you don't hear about him.
And one of the things they got to push is if you don't train people for bad things that happen, to make independent decisions quickly and efficiently, explain why you did what you did, but do something. Don't sit back and do nothing. Do something. And if you take that and you keep scaring them into the point where don't do nothing until I get there, that's what you're going to end up with. A bunch of officers who ain't going to do nothing to get there because they don't have time to keep getting rid up and suspended. Yeah, and I'm about to be over time, so let me get everybody, because that damn Joe. I learned that don't have two modes on the show at the same time. They're gonna take me there. So, Joe, tell us who you are. Tell us, give us some parting words before we leave out, because we're gonna have to do a part 2 on some other stuff.
Well, I'm always at your beck and call, your greatness, and to my brother Mo, anytime I'm available. So, whenever you need some pushback, I'm there.
What's your show on Saturdays?
That's Behind the Blue Curtain. Stan Mason. We talk about all the issues as we do here, and all debate is welcome.
Mo, what you got for me, sir?
Oh man, I appreciate that. And I'll definitely be here for you, Joe, anytime you need me. But let me just tell you, I'm here. I come here for the people, man. Look at DVP and Joe have already served the people. They did their service. This is my service. I show up because I want these conversations. Y'all might not know it, man, but I'm gonna tell you, these conversations replace a lot of conversations that a lot of people did not have and still probably are not having. And it makes us almost like a family so we can learn from each other. We don't need to agree. I don't come here for agreement, man. I come here to learn. I come here to give knowledge. I come here to just, be with a family and understand where we are, how we thrive, and how we get forward. And so that's my story. I'm sticking to it, DVP. I'm sticking to that.
I want to thank y'all for coming. And I'm going to say this, learn from who you can learn from, but don't talk to anybody who can't ever admit to making mistakes. And some of the mistakes we make can't even be called mistakes. They're choices. If you're trying to get information from somebody and they can't tell you they knowingly and willingly made a bad choice, you're not going to learn that from them, because they're trying to tailor the conversation too much. Again, the reason Mo made on my show is that we had disagreements in another forum, and they said things that made me look at something. They brought intelligence to my tool belt, something that I missed. You need people who bring that to you, not people who just agree with you, people who can give you a different perspective and say, damn, I didn't think of it like that. Women are the greatest people to talk to as men, because you see things from a women perspective that we never see. You don't see the same threats. There's just, Mo, grab the books right quick. You got a copy of them around you? Because I actually was running late. But this is what we got to do. We can't be afraid to get information. We can't be afraid to have our thought processes challenged. We can't be afraid to be proven wrong if we want to do right. There are lots of us who are wrong. We make mistakes, honest mistakes sometimes, but we make a lot of bad choices intentionally. Know that that's what you're doing and know why. Mo gonna tell us his 2 books, then we're gonna get out of here before I get a nasty ground.
All right. It's kind of hard to see. I'm trying to get it in there.
All right, back up just a little bit. There you go.
Right there. Okay, this is one of my books. This is called The Good, the Bad, and the Blue. You probably have an idea what it's about. It's about policing in America, and I try to take an unbiased approach and just put the facts into this book. Let you read them, make your own opinion, have your own thoughts on how you feel about it. But the details are in here, and I put in a lot of memorials for our Black brothers and sisters who fell by the wayside. So it's on Amazon, or you can contact me. I'll give you a free copy. I'm not in this to get rich. I just want to help our people out. Second book. This is my autobiography. It's called Perforated Fiber. I might look normal right now, but I had a real trying childhood. Those 2 figures on there, that's me and my brother. And I feel like I went through hell and back. There's probably worse stories, but anyway, this is my story. And so I put it in an autobiography for people to read, and it's used in a psychology program to help people understand the psychology of a young person coming up with trying situation.
I appreciate it. But we gonna come back again because this was a lot, and we opened up a lot of doors that we need to walk through. We need to stomp through them and kick them. So we're gonna come back again. I appreciate you guys for taking time out today. Mo, hey man, much love. And one day I'm gonna meet y'all. We're gonna share ginger ale and some war stories and do what do what old men do when they sharing war stories. All right, so y'all know what it is. I ain't got my drink because I was rushing, but I do have a lemonade. So until next week, y'all know what it is. Peace, popcorn, and chicken grease, and we out.
All right.